Hello everyone, my name's Ihata and I'm teaching at Musashino University in Tokyo, which is a fairly medium-sized private university here. It's my pleasure to talk to you today about mentoring our graduate research students and the importance of teaching them about adapting to change and chance events as they do their work. I began to think about this more seriously because of events that happened in my own student's case, and also as a result of speaking on an omnibus course for the graduate students about research. I'm going to be talking about styles of mentoring because they are relevant here, and talking about both planning and the preparedness for unexpected events that I am focusing on. I'll look at real-life examples of both negative and positive events that could come up and look at some conclusions later. To begin with, the styles of mentoring I'm talking about, these ideas are based on an article by Petrin in 2014, which is related to mentoring millennials in the business situation. But I think that it has quite a connection with what we do in the academic world as well. Of course, when we think of mentoring, we're mostly thinking about the traditional one-to-one relationship that a teacher has with a student, especially a graduate student. This is based on regular meetings, and although I say one-to-one, it is sometimes a teacher to more than one student at a time, although we're usually giving individual advice, focusing on problems that we need to resolve, suggesting ways to go forward or suggesting resources they can look at. But Petrin suggests two other types of mentoring, group and situational mentoring, and I think that these are very relevant here. Group mentoring in the academic world could involve peer-to-peer relationships, and this is very useful for our current students who have all come through education systems where group work or pair work are fairly much the norm. If they are working with their peers, particularly if we can involve them in group discussion with older students, they have a chance to hear about their experiences, to hear how they may have encountered and coped with problems that have come up, and I'm sure you can all understand that this will have a far greater impression on their minds, be far more lasting as a memory for them than just bald advice given by their mentor, although hopefully the two will reinforce each other. Situational mentoring is something that occurs just on an occasional basis when a student has a particular question that needs answering, or needs to ask about some particular situation that's come up. This is a case where the particular mentor may not necessarily be able to answer the student's request or question because of them branching out into areas that the mentor is not actually an expert in. And this is a good situation in which we can involve colleagues who we know have expertise in that area. It's a good chance for students to be exposed to other teachers' mentoring style at the same time. So I think that we can follow Petrin's advice and create a kind of hybrid of the three. This would be probably the best approach to take for our students' benefit, for all our students' benefit. So let me have a look at my preparedness for things that may happen along the way. There's a quote there often attributed to John Lennon, although it's said that it's from as early as 1957, possibly earlier. In any case, we know life happens. I want to look at the two things here, the need to plan and the need to be prepared for other things. We do need to plan research carefully, of course. We have to make certain that the time and effort and money involved are valuable resources, and they should be focused to avoid waste, to avoid the risk of failure. There may be an opportunity that will not come up again. We can't afford to miss such a window. Planning the report or the thesis, such as an outline. This helps to ensure that the report is well organized as it's written. It also makes the actual work of writing easier if we have planned the outline together with the student very carefully. It provides an overview of the projected research, and it is useful when reorganization is necessary. If we do have to replan, we can see where we can make adjustments quite quickly if we have a good outline. It does enable the mentor to see what the student has in mind, to suggest areas that need more work. The need to be prepared to be flexible. This is what I'm focusing on here. Why do we need to do that? For the negative things that can come up. Life gets in the way with illness, delays for other reasons, difficulty recruiting subjects or finding people to collaborate with us. At the moment, we have the coronavirus causing problems for many people. We have to encourage the student not to panic, to look for ways to resolve this, or even to turn it to their advantage, which is much better, of course, if we can. But we also have to look at the possibility that some lucky chance will come up and make sure that we and the students don't miss it, to see possibilities and be ready to act on them. This is very important too. Here's a real life example, and I'm going to look at, first of all, a negative example and then a positive example. These are both real situations. In this case, the student A, who is not Japanese, planned to spend the summer vacation in her home country for two reasons. One was to interview a certain teacher who she very much respected, who was an educational inspiration to many people, but also to do her main research, to collect data from a variety of students in her target group, and then to return to Japan and analyze everything. Two problems came up. The first interview had to be cancelled because that teacher was taken seriously ill. Actually, even though it was postponed and a Skype interview later planned, it fell through because the poor man actually died of his illness. Student 2 was looking for employment in Japan but didn't succeed in getting any job offers before August and had to cancel the trip home because she was still waiting for possible follow-up interviews in the middle of August or even later. Instead of the teacher, our solution to number 1 was we considered educational organizations that were involved in the field she was researching and contacted people who were able to answer about those organizations and the work they were doing with her target group of students. This was difficult at first because they were very protective of the children in their care. But as a result, the data we collected provided a very interesting variety of opinion, which would not have been in the original plan. So this was a case where, as the Japanese say, pinch became chance. In the second case, collecting her data, fortunately a very kind relative agreed to assist by carrying out the data collection in her home country and sending video and audio recordings to her for her to analyze. This wasn't a perfect solution because it meant that she herself had no control over the recordings and had to sometimes interpret things that were not clear with my help. If she'd been collecting the data in person, she could have asked the subject to repeat or to explain. Nonetheless, she did obviously manage to obtain a very suitable body of data from her originally intended subjects. So the analysis and discussion of the findings could be incorporated in the dissertation as she originally intended. I'd like to look now at an example on the positive side, grasping chance opportunities. This example comes from my own personal experience when I was doing research in the UK towards my PhD thesis. I typically spent days working in the university library there, and on one day when I was returning to the student hall of residence where I was staying, there was a fire engine outside, and a group of firemen and various students, especially one group of Japanese young women, were mulling around outside, and I wondered what was happening. And I spoke to one of the firemen. It turned out that he was extremely concerned that these girls, who had managed to start a small fire in the kitchen by forgetting they had a pizza under the grill warming for lunch, were not understanding the risks involved, and he was very much earnest to make sure that they did understand. Well, I was impressed that he was so concerned, and seeing that the girls were Japanese and I had Japanese ability to some extent, I agreed to act as an informal interpreter and explain the situation to everybody's satisfaction, I hope, although not in wonderful Japanese. It turned out I got talking to these girls and to a British woman who was taking care of them there, and discovered they were on an intensive English study program at another university in the same city. And I was able to contact their teachers on that program and get their permission to allow me to study those students' progress in my field, which is reading in English. They allowed me to do a pre- and post-test survey with them. This data that I collected led to a 20,000 word module in my PhD thesis. Now, that only happened because I was already wondering what to do for the next module in my thesis. I had completed the literature review and needed to do a 20,000 word pilot study or something similar, but I had no subjects in mind, no situation available to me at that time. This was my lucky chance. But it was, of course, only something I benefited from because I was mentally prepared. I was already looking for an opportunity. Louis Pasteur, famous for pasteurization, said that chance favors only the prepared mind, and this is what I want my students to learn. Pasteur benefited from an accident. His assistant went off on holiday, forgetting to administer the strain of virus they wanted to test. Instead, he did it when he came back and the virus had become weaker. Pasteur noticed what happened and the fact that in this case it worked, and we have the birth of modern immunology and many, many other vaccines. Fleming's discovery of penicillin is famous for the intervention of chance. Columbus was not planning to discover the Western Hemisphere and did not even realize at first that he had. Microwave ovens, it is said, are the result of someone having a bar of peanut candy in his pocket. From it. Okay, so to look at our possible conclusions here. The role of chance in daily life is well known, but we tend to overlook it. We do not take it seriously as something that perhaps we should be training students to look for. In teaching readiness, we are training their minds to be open and prepared to overcome negative events and also to seize positive opportunities. In overcoming negative events, we may enable them to seize the chance to work in a new direction to their advantage. We can also here look at the importance of group mentoring, which will give them prior occasions in their memory to look back to when they do encounter difficulty. Situational mentoring is a possibility of involving colleagues to help overcome particular difficulties that may come up, or just simply to answer certain questions that are not the mentor's own field of expertise. Okay, well, this actually concludes my presentation, and I would like to say thank you very much to everyone who has tuned in to listen to me, and I am very happy to hear of anybody's own experiences, positive or negative. So please feel free to contact me at any time. Thank you very much, and I hope you will all stay safe.